When you live in a quiet rural town in Texas, you expect peace, maybe the occasional nosy neighbor and perhaps a lost cow or two wandering onto your land. What you don't expect is for someone to literally move into your home while you're away, and then call the police on you when you come back. But let me start at the beginning. My name is Jake Sanders, and I've owned a ranch in the outskirts of Waco for the last 11 years. I inherited the land from my grandfather, a stubborn but kind old man who always said, "Protect the land, Jake. It's the only thing that remembers who we are." This place is my pride and joy, 50 acres of rolling fields, a large, well-kept barn, a modest 2-story house, and some of the best sunset views in the state. A few years ago, due to a housing boom, a new development popped up next to my property, cookie-cutter homes with tiny yards, white fences, and a homeowners association stricter than a military academy. The residents were mostly fine except for one, Karen Whitmore. Or as everyone eventually started calling her, HOA Karen. Karen wasn't just a member of the HOA, she was the HOA. She'd appointed herself head of every committee, enforced rules with religious zeal, and acted like the whole town needed her approval to breathe. She took an immediate dislike to my ranch. She hated my gravel driveway, complained about the unsightly barn, and once left a note on my gate suggesting I upgrade to suburban standard landscaping. I ignored her. In early spring of this year, I planned a 2-week trip to Colorado to see my sister and her new baby. Before I left, I made sure everything was in order. The fences secure, animals cared for by my neighbor and longtime friend Bill, and security cameras active. I wasn't even halfway through my trip when I got a strange alert from my home surveillance system. Motion detected. I pulled up the feed on my phone and saw a moving truck. Yes, a whole U-Haul, backing into my driveway. Then came the kicker. Karen, her husband Greg, and their 2 teenagers started unloading furniture. I nearly dropped my phone. I called Bill immediately. He hadn't seen anything unusual, having gone into town that day. But when he drove over to check, he confirmed what I was seeing. Karen and her family were moving into my house. I cut my trip short and booked the next flight home. When I arrived at the ranch, I was furious, but I tried to stay calm. I pulled up to my house, which now had flower pots Karen style on the porch, and knocked on the front door. Karen answered, wearing yoga pants, holding a coffee mug that said, HOA President. "Can I help you?" she asked, with the smugness of a woman who thought she owned the world. "Yeah," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "You're living in my house." She scoffed. "This house has been vacant for years. Abandoned. The HOA decided it was a public hazard. We claimed it under adverse possession." I was dumbfounded. "You what?" "I was gone for 9 days. You can't just move into someone's home. That's breaking and entering." Karen didn't flinch. "You can't prove that. The property looked neglected. No proper signage. It's your fault for not maintaining clear boundaries." At that point, I didn't care about diplomacy anymore. I told her I was calling the sheriff, and I did. But before they arrived, Karen dialed 911 herself. "Hello, yes," she said loudly and dramatically on speakerphone. "There's a deranged man threatening my family and trying to break into our home. He's trespassing. Please send officers immediately." When the deputies arrived, I showed them the deed, my ID, the camera footage, and even the plane ticket stubs. Karen tried to argue, claiming she had HOA authorization to repurpose derelict property, but the deputies were not buying it. Karen, Greg, and their kids were escorted off my property, loudly protesting the entire way. Karen screamed about lawsuits, about being treated unfairly, and how the neighborhood would hear of this injustice. It should have ended there. But it didn't. The next day, I found out Karen had filed a complaint with the county claiming I was running an illegal farm operation, had unsafe fencing, and was storing hazardous materials, by which she meant hay and fertilizer. I had to deal with inspectors and a zoning board, none of whom found anything wrong. Karen even tried to rally the HOA to push for annexing my land into their jurisdiction. It failed miserably. Eventually, I filed a restraining order and pressed charges for trespassing and attempted squatting. Karen and her husband ended up with hefty fines and a serious warning from the judge. The story made the local paper, and Karen's reputation took a hit she's never quite recovered from. My ranch is back to normal now. Peaceful. Quiet. And I installed even more cameras. But now and then, I still get HOA newsletters mysteriously placed in my mailbox, even though I'm very much not part of the HOA. Some people never learn. But every time I walk the property now, I think of my grandfather's words. Protect the land. And I smile because I did. Even from a Karen.